My name is Evelyn Hart, and when I look back on the last few years, I sometimes wonder where things truly began to unravel. Grief has a way of blurring timelines. One moment you are holding everything together, and the next, your life is being quietly packed into boxes by people who barely look at you anymore. After my husband, Thomas, passed away, the house we had shared for 40 years suddenly felt too big, too quiet, too full of echoes. The winter after his funeral, my doctor gently insisted I shouldn't live alone, not after the dizzy spells, not after the night I fainted near the kitchen door. My son, Daniel, immediately offered for me to stay with him. Just until you were steady again, Mom, he said. And I believed him. His wife, Melanie, greeted me with a polite smile when I arrived. It wasn't unkind, just strained, like she was practicing hospitality that didn't come naturally. Their home felt modern and immaculate, a place where everything had a place. And I slowly realized I didn't quite have one. In the beginning, I tried to be useful. I folded laundry, cooked small meals, and kept the children busy with stories and card games. But Melanie always hovered, gently redirecting me with phrases like, "Just relax, Evelyn," or "You don't need to do this." Her smile never reached her eyes, and soon, I felt more like an intruder than a guest. I noticed small changes first. My knitting bag disappeared from the living room. The framed wedding photo of Thomas and me that I kept on my nightstand vanished one afternoon. When I asked, Melanie said she'd put them away for safety. But when I requested them back, she hesitated, too long to be convincing. Then came the day Daniel went to the attic to retrieve the box holding my most precious keepsake, my wedding dress. I wanted to pass it down to my granddaughter someday. I wanted to hold something that still smelled faintly of lavender sachets and the happiest day of my life. But when I opened the box, my heart dropped. It was empty. Melanie stood in the doorway, arms folded. It was falling apart, Evelyn. Yellowed, torn. You don't need things like that anymore. I got rid of it last week. My breath froze. I felt something inside me, some old, quiet part, break cleanly in two. Daniel looked guilty, but he said nothing. And that silence hurt more than the loss itself. For the first time in my life, I felt utterly disposable. But losing my dress wasn't the real betrayal. Because only days later, I would uncover something in that house, something hidden, something meant to deceive me, that changed everything I thought I knew about my own family. After the wedding dress incident, something in me shifted. I woke each morning feeling like I was walking on eggshells in a house that was supposed to feel like family. Melanie's footsteps echoed behind me wherever I went, her tight smile appearing whenever I touched something that wasn't necessary for me to worry about. She spoke sweetly, but always with the kind of tone that politely pushed you out of your own life. Daniel, caught between work stress and his wife's impatience, barely noticed the silence growing between us. I didn't blame him, not fully. But his absence was louder than anything Melanie ever said. One afternoon, Daniel asked me to look for an old insurance file in the storage room near the garage. The room was dim, dusty, and chaotic, boxes stacked unevenly, forgotten belongings tossed together. I moved slowly, careful not to trip. As I shifted a pile of faded folders, something caught my eye, an old wooden drawer, wedged behind a paint can. It didn't match the other furniture. This drawer looked old, almost antique. My heart nudged me to open it. Inside, I found papers tied loosely with a brittle ribbon. At first, I thought they were meaningless receipts. But the moment I saw Thomas's handwriting, my breath caught. It was a property deed, signed by Thomas, left fully in my name. The address belonged to a small cabin we had visited years ago, a quiet place by a lake where Thomas had once said, "If anything ever happens to me, I want you to have a sanctuary." I had forgotten those words until now. Under the deed lay a letter. The envelope had yellowed edges, but my name was written clearly on the front. My hands trembled as I opened it. "My dearest Evelyn," it began. "If you were reading this, something has taken me from you sooner than we hoped. I wanted to make sure you'd always have a home that belongs only to you." My chest tightened. Tears blurred the ink. Thomas had prepared for my future. He had given me something precious, Something permanent. So why? Why had it been hidden? As I stood there, my heart racing, footsteps echoed from the hallway. I quickly slipped the letter into my cardigan and placed the deed back in the drawer. When Daniel stepped into the doorway, his expression was oddly cautious. "Mom, did you find the file?" he asked. "Yes," I said softly, forcing a smile. But inside, a storm had begun. Because I knew, deep down, that someone didn't want me to have that property. Someone had kept Thomas's final gift from me. And it wasn't an accident. But it wasn't until I confronted Melanie the next morning and saw the look in her eyes that I realized just how deep the deception truly went. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Thomas's handwriting. His careful loops. His promise that I would always have a place of my own. I lay awake listening to the unfamiliar hums of Daniel's house, the distant dishwasher, the air vents clicking on and off, the muffled footsteps of a family that no longer felt like mine. By morning, I knew I couldn't keep the discovery to myself any longer. Melanie was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs, dressed neatly, humming a tune that felt too cheerful for the heaviness in my chest. She didn't acknowledge me until I was almost beside her. "Good morning, Evelyn," she said, stirring her tea. "Did you sleep all right?" The question felt empty, but I still answered politely. "I found some old documents yesterday." Her hand froze just slightly, so slight most would have missed it. But not me. "Oh," she said, turning with a soft smile. "Daniel didn't tell me you found anything interesting." "I didn't say they were interesting," I replied. "Just old." That smile tightened. A tiny, controlled tension around her eyes. "What kind of documents?" she pressed gently. I could feel the air shift. It was subtle, but unmistakable. "A property deed," I said, watching her carefully. "With my name on it. And a letter from Thomas." Her composure faltered, only for a split second, but it was enough. "Oh," she said, too calmly. "Well, I'm sure Daniel was planning to show you eventually. Maybe things just got misplaced after the funeral." Misplaced? A sealed letter? A cabin deed? Hidden in a drawer behind junk? No. That wasn't misplacement. That was intention. Before I could respond, Daniel entered the kitchen, adjusting his tie, and Melanie immediately took control. "She's confused about some old papers," Melanie said, touching his arm. I explained they were probably just clutter. Something inside me snapped. "Clutter?" "Thomas left the property to me," I said firmly. "He wanted me to have it. And someone hid it." Daniel sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Mom, we didn't hide anything. We've just been busy. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding." There it was again, dismissal cloaked in kindness. "I know what I saw," I whispered. Melanie's expression shifted, just for a heartbeat, into something colder, sharper. Then it vanished behind her practiced smile. "You shouldn't worry yourself with legal documents," she said softly. "It's too much stress for you." Too much stress. That's when I realized exactly what role she wanted me to play in this house. Someone quiet. Someone compliant. Someone easy to control. But I wasn't that woman. Not anymore. And the very next day, when I found the one document they never thought I'd uncover, I knew it was time to make a choice that would change my entire life. The next morning felt strangely calm, like the house itself was holding its breath. I waited until everyone left, Daniel for work, the children for school, and Melanie for her morning errands. The moment the front door closed behind her, I finally allowed myself to move with purpose. There was one place I hadn't searched yet. A space Melanie always insisted on handling herself, the upstairs hallway cabinet where important documents were supposedly kept, organized. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step echoing louder than my heartbeat. Inside the cabinet were neat rows of labeled folders. Insurance. Bank statements. Household bills. At first glance, everything looked perfectly ordinary. Too ordinary. I ran my fingers along the files until one label caught my attention. Miscellaneous. Old papers. Not a normal category. Not for someone as obsessively organized as Melanie. I opened it. Inside was a sealed envelope. My name written in bold, deliberate lettering. I froze. The handwriting wasn't Thomas's. It wasn't Daniel's either. It was Melanie's. The envelope was already slit open. Whatever had been inside had clearly been read before, just not by me. Heart racing, I reached further into the folder and pulled out a document folded carefully in thirds. My breath caught. It was the property tax statement for the cabin, with my name crossed out in pen. Under it, someone had rewritten, "Transfer requested." No signature. No approval. Just an intention. An intention to take what Thomas had left me. I stood there in the quiet hallway, the paper trembling in my hands. Everything suddenly clicked into place: the missing photo frames, the misplaced keepsakes, the decluttered wedding dress, the constant discouragement, the way she spoke for Daniel whenever things grew uncomfortable. She wasn't trying to help me. She was trying to phase me out. And this document was the final confirmation. I knew then what I had to do. By the afternoon, my suitcase was packed. I didn't take much, just a few clothes, the framed photo of Thomas I retrieved from a box in the garage, my knitting needles, and his letters. The house felt colder as I carried my things down the stairs, but I didn't hesitate. When Daniel returned home early and saw me standing by the door, his eyes widened. "Mom, what's going on?" Before Melanie could step in front of him, I held up the tax document. "This," I said softly. "This tells me everything I needed to know." Her face drained of color. Daniel looked between us, confused, panicked, and suddenly very, very aware. "I'm leaving," I continued. "Thomas made sure I'd have a home. And now, I'm finally going to live in it." Melanie opened her mouth, but for once, she had no clever phrases, no polished excuses, no sweetly coded insults. I stepped outside, closing the chapter and the door behind me. Because sometimes you don't wait for your family to choose you. Sometimes you choose yourself. And when Daniel called me days later, his voice shaking with regret, he asked one question I never expected, one that would change everything once more.